Committee to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Murphy, we have a guest with us this evening.
We do. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. For a little background, newly appointed superintendents in Massachusetts have the opportunity to be assigned a coach during their first year as superintendent, and it continues a little less frequent in additional years, and attend the new superintendent's induction program. Kevin Courtney, retired superintendent from Pioneer Valley Regional School District, is serving as my coach currently, and he'll give a brief overview of the program. Welcome, Mr. Courtney. Do you want to come up?
Yeah. Yep, and can you just check to make sure there's a little green light on? Green means go. Just push it. Oh.
Jody's coming to help.
Thank you.
There we go. Welcome.
I think Mary just gave the overview, so I'm all set. Any questions? So as Mary said, my name is Kevin Courtney, and I'm here tonight to give you a brief overview of the new superintendent's induction program that Mary's participating in. Again, I'm her coach this year. First, a little bit of history, which you might be familiar with because Mike Bergeron was also a participant in this program, but I'll give you just a brief history. This is the 13th year of the program. Mary's in the 13th cohort, about 25 people in this cohort. The beginnings of this program coincide with my retirement from superintendent of schools in Pioneer Valley, which is up in the Franklin County. So I retired. Someone asked me if I'd be interested. I thought I'd do this for a year or two. This is now my 13th year of coaching in this program, and it's been a great experience. The induction program is a collaboration between Mass Association of School Superintendents, the Department of Education, Mass Association of School Committees, designed to support new superintendents to be effective instructional leaders, build strong relationships with their committee, and develop high-functioning leadership teams of district administrators and principals. The program's evolved over 13 years to the point where virtually every new superintendent in the district participates. About 200, over 200, I think, by now, in the 13 years we've been doing this. As I said, there are about 25 in Mary's cohort. And it's gotten to the point where DESE is actually recommending this to all new superintendents, and in fact, some of the goals, evaluation goals of superintendents include 2 or 3 goals from the new superintendent's induction program. So it's firmly established within the state. I think we've done some very good work and dealt with an awful lot of superintendents to this point. Let me talk about the design of the program a little bit. It's a 3-year program. Consisting of one-to-one coaching and content days. And content days are days when Mary and her cohort meet all together, full day, well, some full days because it's a combination of in-person and remote days, but it's all of the cohort meeting together with facilitators and presenters and what have you. Coaches like myself attend all of those meetings as well. Year 1 has 8 content days. Mary's in year 1. Year 2 has 5 content days, and Year 3 has 2 content days, and then 6 regional consultancy meetings. In terms of one-to-one coaching, Year 1, we have 6 hours, up to 6 hours of one-to-one coaching. Year 2 is 4 hours of one-to-one coaching, and Year 3 is regional consultancy meetings. And I think it's important to note that the one-to-one coaching isn't all Mary and I sitting in a room talking. Some of that happens, but it's also my attending meetings like this, leadership team meetings, visiting classrooms, reviewing documents. It can be a variety of things. There is a lot of conversation, one-on-one conversation, either you know, either remotely or on the phone or in person, but it's not only that. There are a number of other things that we do to try to give feedback to the superintendent on some of the things that she's involved with. FYI, the coaches also participate in 8 days of full day of training to become better coaches, I guess. We have spent a lot of time at Harvard, this was begun by 2 professors at Harvard, so we do work down there. But it's somewhere, and it's either remote or it's in person, and it's full days, and there are 8 of them. So in terms of outcomes in the program, entry plan, which I know is on your agenda tonight, it's a terrific plan that Mary's put together. It's an exemplar. We'll have to use it for other superintendents. Really terrific. A findings report, which will come later, midwinter or in March. And the entry report is just that. What did Mary find out as a result of the things that she told you she would do during the entry process? It's gathering data, count, see, hear data, putting it all together. The findings report isn't, here's everything good, here's everything that needs improvement, and here's how I'm going to fix it. That doesn't happen quite yet. It's sharing with you and others that this is what I've discovered in the time I've been doing the entry plan. Now I'm going to spend the next segment of time, few weeks, months, whatever, just trying to figure out root cause analysis, what's going on, what the priorities are, and so on and so forth. And then ultimately a strategy, which is, in Marlborough's case, you have a strategy that Mike developed. It's a good one. What we anticipate happening is there'll be modifications to it, there'll be additions, there'll be deletions or what have you, but you have the basis of a strategy, so it won't be a brand new strategy. It'll be a strategy that built on what you already working with. And finally, another outcome that's very important is that it's a mantra that we have. You really have to develop a team of principals and other district leaders that understand and own the strategy. Without that, you're not going to be very successful. You need a wider coalition than that, but you definitely have to be working closely with your leadership team, administrators, and what have you to make sure there's authentic ownership of the strategy that's developed. Let me emphasize 3 or 4 points. Even though Mary, this comes up a lot, people in Mary's position, even though Mary's been in Marlborough for a while, many of her colleagues have too. They've been in districts for 15, 20 years. So the question is, why? And what we've found is that even when someone's been in the district as long as Mary has been, you're wearing a different hat. You see things differently, people see you differently. Sometimes it takes a little while for that to all come together, but it does. And it's very important, I think, to follow a process even though you've been in the district, because you're in a different position now, and people will see you differently, you see them differently. So I want to emphasize that that's not unusual. We have a lot of superintendents who move up within districts, some of whom have been in districts for 15, 20 years. The program supports superintendents in improving student achievement. Our focus is on teaching and learning. That's what we try to focus on. That's what the strategy really should be focusing on. Not that there aren't other things that come up that you have to deal with in the strategy, but the focus should be on the instructional core, on teaching and learning. It's not a course or a workshop. We don't advocate for any specific program, any reading program, math program, or any other program for that matter. It's not that kind of a program. It deals with the adaptive pieces of being a leader in a district. It's not we're not going to be recommending specific programs. I've said this before, but I want to say it again. The superintendent can't do this alone. Sometimes it's a little bit of a shock for a new superintendent, but you can't. You need authentic ownership and engagement from school committee, principals, teachers, community, and what have you in order to be successful. You have to work through other people. Finally, and obviously, the work doesn't stop while the strategy is being developed. The superintendent and everybody else have to work along parallel tracks. Mary's continuing the work that Mike began here and led when he was superintendent. And in fact, that's one of the goals, is maintaining momentum during transition. So you attend to the day-to-day tasks. We also have an eye on a little longer range policy, longer range strategy at the same time. So that's about it. If there are questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Mrs. Hennessy.
Sure, okay. So I'm curious, how does it end up that you get paired with someone? Like, there are a number of you all. Is it by location? Is it by experience level? Is it some specialty?
At one time, I would have told you it was geography, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm from the western part of the state, although not originally. I'm from Worcester and Shrewsbury originally. But I've been up there for a long time. I was superintendent in Franklin County. So a lot of my work has been done with superintendents in the western part of the state. It's still roughly geographical. You know, they don't send me to the Cape. That's nice, from western Massachusetts. But Marlborough's, you know, we come to Marlborough for a lot of our workshops over at the, where is it, over on Lakeside Ave, right? Yeah.
That's Western.
Yeah. So it's not that far. So it's still generally that. You get paired up generally with people in somewhat close, in a close geographical area.
Okay. I just was curious as to if it was size of school district experience in that realm, or diversity in population, something like that. So thank you for, you know, giving some clarity to that.
It tends to be geography. Sometimes things shift. You can end up working with, if you have particular expertise, say in a regional school district or a Voc school, or even a collaborative for that matter. Sometimes that we pair people, or I don't do the pairing, but facilitators pair up people like that. But you know, with the remote work that we do now, geography's become a little bit less of an issue, particularly during COVID. Although we're back to doing in person now too, so geography matters.
Great, thank you.
Do you stay with that? Like, will you be with Mary for all 3 years?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I
Hope
thought.
so. Right. Yeah. Assuming we both want that to happen, right?
And so how many coaches are there?
I'm one of the original coaches, and there are about 4 of us from 13 years ago. There are about 8 or 9 coaches. You know, now we've gotten to the point where people are transitioning out, where a coach might only take 1 superintendent, and you know, others will have 3 or 4. I have. In Mary's cohort, I have 2. In the cohort just before her, I have 3. In the cohort before her, I have 3. So 2 or 3 is about, you know, is about what we usually do. So there are about 8 to 10 coaches right now, different levels of transition.
Great. It's a great service that you do. I appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Well, it's a pleasure to do it with a person like Mary, so you're lucky.
Well, the only thing I would add to that, it's just nice because I think with any of us from a professional development standpoint, it's nice to have someone that you can bounce ideas off of, who may be out of district or have run into other experiences or not, you know, and that way you have the ability of being able to communicate with somebody that's had some of those similar challenges potentially. Because I think in any of our businesses, you need to rely upon your peers.
Yeah, that's a great point, because in my day when I was superintendent, it was hit or miss, right? You may have a mentor, and if you did, you were lucky.
Right.
No one assigned a mentor to you, or a coach, not a mentor. I was lucky. I had a person that was my mentor for about 15 years, but that was just luck. I just happened to work for him and liked him, and he was a terrific mentor. Wasn't the case with everybody, and that was part of the reason for starting this program, was just how you articulated the need for that. Right?
Well, I think it's been a benefit that I feel like from a professional standpoint, and really in any kind of business, it's for all of us to develop and hone in our skills, but we need to respect that each person can bring something new to, you know, the relationship, and be able to work off of each other and provide each other good context and perspective with anything. So it's great to have someone like yourself, and just like we've all tried to say, like collaboratively, we all need to work together, but we're going to bring different perspectives to the table. So
it's also the cohort. I mean, one of the intended outcomes of the program is to develop a cohort, so that you know, superintendency can be a lonely job. There's only one superintendent in each school district, so it's really helpful to develop a cohort of superintendents that feel free to call on one another for help too, not just the coaches.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Appreciate
for coming out.
Yeah.
I'll leave the green light on. Question? Do you want it off?
No, that's fine, because we have others.
Now that I know how to work it,
Excellent. Moving on to Mrs. Murphy.
Thank you very much. Elementary enrollment, I included one last update on the elementary class size. Moving forward, I will include this probably every couple of months or so that we'll have an idea of any changes. I did want to highlight the fact that kindergarten enrollment did exceed 400 with this update, which we expected to happen, but this is the official documentation that we have exceeded it once again, which is, I think, our new reality, because this is the 5th year in a row that we are exceeding 400 in the class size at the elementary. I wanted to update you on the Massachusetts Urban Superintendent Network. On September 16th, Assistant Superintendent Jody O'Brien and I attended our first Urban Superintendents Network meeting. Marlborough is one of 32 districts that meet the membership criteria to participate in the Urban Network. Districts must enroll students in grades pre-K to 12 and at the top 25% for 3 years in a row for total student enrollment, percentage of economically disadvantaged students, percentage of English learners, and percentage of churn. And churn was a new word for Assistant Superintendent O'Brien and I, and that is defined as students coming and are going from the district in a year. I think we've always talked about our transitional population. This is just a definition of that. Moving forward, these superintendent network meetings will be occurring in Marlborough as well, so will be an advantage for us. We're looking forward to it. Superintendent goals, I've included a draft of my goals for your review and comments. At the next scheduled meeting, I will ask you to accept my goals. I'm asking that so that I can then share them with the district and school leaders so that they can draft their goals as well. If there are any edits, additions, questions, or changes, please contact me so I can send out a revision as necessary to be prepared for the next meeting. Finally, I submitted the final copy of my entry plan, and I am hoping to be able to move forward with that. There's a couple of surveys and things that I want to post and finalize some meetings. Also would like to remind committee members that if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one entry meeting with me, I would look forward to having that time. Either in person or remote, whatever works for your schedule. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Should we schedule with Patty?
Yes.
Okay.
You can contact Patty.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. Just, I would just say, I know that you're not going to give us a bi-monthly update on the increases in student population, but knowing what we went through in the spring, I just don't want you to feel like you have to shoulder all of this. I mean, if they're still coming in droves, reach out, because if we need to make I don't know where we put another classroom, but I mean, if we have to do something, I'd rather address it sooner rather than later.
We are watching it. We are not at 5,000 right now, but we are increasing again. As it approaches 49, I will come back and report out.
Okay. And there was something else I wanted to ask you. Oh, come on. Oh, sorry, my computer was frozen there. I'm just curious, how many districts are in the Urban Superintendent's Network?
So There are currently 32. There are 30 that meet the criteria for all 4 indicators for the last 3 years. And there are 2 districts that have remained in the cohort that, because they don't currently meet but had in the past, so they're allowed to remain in for up to 2 years, I think the guidelines was, for up to 2 additional years once you don't meet the criteria. So a total of 32 districts in the state.
So we meet all 4?
We meet all 4.
Yeah. And we're in the top 25 in the state for number of students, for size.
But yes, it's one of the indicators, yeah. So we're in the top quartile, yeah.
A lot of small districts in the state.
There are. 5,000 seems to be pretty large, on the larger side these days. There's a lot of declining populations in a lot of districts.
Yeah, because they're all moving to Marlborough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Ms. Hennessy.
Shocker. So first, in order, Mr. Diaz, can you refresh my memory? When did we think we were going to hear back about the group that reviewed Richer as the site? Was it like December?
It's in his report.
Oh, sorry. I'm not remembering, obviously.
He's next. Don't worry.
Well, I'm trying to put it, I'm asking because of the number of the
He's
kids.
going to tell you all about it in 30 seconds.
Okay.
Late November.
Thanks for jumping in there. Sorry, I didn't remember. I've had a little bit going on. I apologize. My second question would be relative to the urban network. Is it possible to get a list at some point so we can kind of look at some of the comparative districts? Reason I ask that is just because at many times when we're looking at ways that districts are handling something, we look at comparative districts. I think it would be really helpful to just kind of understand that grouping. So obviously that's not top priority, but it'd be helpful.
We have a cover sheet that has a list of all of the districts. I can just scan that in and send it to everyone.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just know that sometimes we're like, oh yeah, we're really similar to Framingham in regards to this or something like that. And I think it's just helpful when we're talking about whether it's the size of the district, diversified population, whatever it is.
We were sitting at a table with Framingham, Waltham, and Somerville.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Because I think also from a school committee standpoint, like when we go down to the state conference, it's helpful then sometimes so that we can try and meet with some of our colleagues that are in some of those districts, because then we talk about some of the similarities or challenges that we're facing. And it's helpful because we can kind of hone in on some of that stuff.
It's very helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great. So thank you. That's it.
Okay, I lied because it's Ms. O'Brien next. Then it will be Mr. Diaz.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight I would like to provide some additional information on the Supervisor of Health Services. As Superintendent Murphy mentioned in her report to the school committee at the last meeting, the district has been able to fill the Supervisor of Health Services position that has been vacant for 3 years. Christine Harrington has hit the ground running with visits and observations and nursing services at each of the schools. She has begun reviewing current practices and procedures to identify any needed changes and has had her first meeting with all the school nurses on the early release day on September 21st. They are all very excited to have Christine here leading them in their work. And the district has also been fortunate to be able to arrange for Judy Steyer, a very experienced administrator, to coach Christine during her first year. Judy recently retired from Framingham Public Schools after 24 years. She had served as school nurse, director of school health services, and lastly as their director of health and wellness. Secondly, I wanted to give some information on this year's COVID-19 procedures for the 2022-23 school year. One of the first tasks that Judy Steyer had assisted with us with prior to Christine Harrington's start was developing COVID-19 procedures for this school year. Marlborough school nurses will not be conducting COVID testing of individuals this year. Symptomatic students will be sent home with information provided to parents on any actions they should take depending on the individual circumstance. If COVID testing is recommended, an at-home self-test kit will be sent home with the student. School districts will also not be reporting any positive COVID cases to DESE or the Board of Health this school year. The specific information that went out to families and staff is included in this report. Lastly, tonight I have Kayla Flaherty-Dawson and Rafael Silva here to present information about wraparound services that were provided to our Marlborough families over the last school year. This has been a valuable service to many of our students and families. So I'd like to welcome Kayla and Rafael up.
If there's stuff
So-
on there that you need to move, just.
I did print notes, but I feel like it's just easier on here. Thank you, thank you. All right, I think we should be good. Probably move this down a little bit. All right, sorry. So, hi. Is it not? Is that better? Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Perfect.
Okay. Yes, so as Jody mentioned, I'm Kayla Flaherty-Dawson. I'm the Wraparound Services Coordinator. Raphael is the other Wraparound Coordinator. He's here as well. And I just wanted to kind of present to you some information about how our first year, oh, I'm moving the slides here like that's doing something. Sorry, Doug. So as you all know, last year it was the first year of wraparound services. The district had identified that this was a need in the district. So first I wanted to kind of briefly touch on what wraparound is for those who may be less familiar with the model. So it's a holistic model of service delivery, and what that means is it kind of involves making sure the needs of the student and family are met, not just in the context of the classroom or the school, but ideally across all areas of their life. And that's done by examining and addressing social and environmental factors that might be negatively impacting a student's ability to be successful in school. As I'm sure you all know, and as research demonstrates, a student who's coming to school hungry or not sure where they're going to sleep that night or with unaddressed medical or mental health concerns isn't going to be walking into that classroom ready to learn. So wraparound coordinators work collaboratively with families, students, school staff, and community partners to facilitate families access to the resources they need in order to be successful. Go to the next one. So these numbers were over the course of last school year, so starting in August 2021 and going through the end of June 2022. As you can see, during this time we received 136 referrals, the vast majority of which resulted in open cases with Raphael and myself. And over the course of the year, we've estimated we were able to serve at least 405 individuals. And so that number encompasses students and their family members who directly benefited from the wraparound case management, as well as individuals who participated in our parent workshops or received help at the holidays through wraparound. The primary source of our referrals was the school adjustment counselors, but we did also receive referrals from school nurses, educational team leaders, registration staff, as well as a couple of self-referrals from parents or caregivers who saw our information on the MPS website. What our services look like with each of the 136 families varied greatly, since everything is kind of tailored to the individual needs of the student and family. But in general, our services begin with a needs assessment, which helps us determine kind of our areas of focus for our work together. And then based on the results of the needs assessment, we help connect families with different resources, and that can look like providing them information, making referrals to medical providers, mental health providers, community organizations like Fresh Start Furniture Bank, Marlborough Food Pantry, that kind of thing. And we also help families apply for health insurance or other benefits that they may be eligible for. And throughout our work with families, we remain in close contact with the school adjustment counselors and any community agencies or organizations working with the families as well, so that we can all work collaboratively and ensure the family and student success. And then anytime a student or family is identified by the district as being homeless or dealing with housing instability, that student is automatically referred to wraparound, and I'll talk a little bit more later about some of the more specific services that we're able to offer to those families. All right, and since wraparound was new to the district last year, a lot of work was done around building relationships, both within MPS as well as in the community, to better serve both students and staff. And so as part of that, in addition to the case management that I mentioned, Raphael and myself also provided case consultation to school adjustment counselors and school staff, as well as information about community resources. We created a database of resources that are available in the community, and that is shared with all the school adjustment counselors and other school staff as appropriate. Some of the categories of resources covered by that database include material resources like food and clothing, mental health, physical health and health insurance, housing, immigration and legal services, things like that. In addition to keeping the database up to date, I sent monthly resource emails to the school adjustment counselors that highlighted wraparound updates, as well as information about relevant community resources and upcoming kind of events. And then based on the feedback we were getting and the needs we were seeing in the community, we created flyers with information about community resources, and those flyers are in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And these are flyers that we provide to families when they begin services with us, but they're also things that we've distributed to school staff, and now they're the medical ones are utilized by the school nurses and registration when families come in and they need help connecting a student with a primary care doctor, for example. And so as we've been working hard over the last year to kind of make wraparound more known within MPS and the greater community, we focused a lot on building relationships and partnerships with community organizations. So I'm just going to highlight just a couple of those here. As I'll talk more about in a second, something that was identified as a huge area of need for our students and their families was healthcare access. And that all begins with access to health insurance. And so in order to address that need, Raphael and myself organized 3 parent workshops throughout the year last year, where parents could come and learn about what rights they have to health insurance in Massachusetts, different options available to them, and then they could get help applying. 2 of those 3 workshops we were able to put on in collaboration with Healthcare for All Massachusetts, which is an organization that helps connect Massachusetts residents to care. And through those workshops, as well as our individual work with families, we were able to help at least 64 previously uninsured individuals enroll in Mass Health, and that number incorporates both MPS students as well as their immediate family members. We found the health insurance workshops to be really successful, particularly for families that were new to Massachusetts, and so they maybe weren't as familiar with our healthcare system or aware of what options were available to them. And so we're planning to continue this partnership with Healthcare for All to be able to continue to provide these workshops throughout this school year. And then we also were able to partner with Toys for Tots and the Marlborough Rotary Club around the holidays to provide holiday gifts for over 110 students in need. Next one. So over the course of the year, based on the results of their needs assessments that we conducted with families, we were able to collect information about the most common needs of the families we worked with. So as you can see, these were our top 5. Help connecting with medical providers, accessing mental health services, accessing health insurance, support with stable housing, and accessing material resources. And you'll notice that those don't add up to 100% because the majority of the families that we're working with are identifying more than one area of need. All right, next one. We also gathered information about the primary language of the families that we served. These numbers are only for the 136 families that had an open wraparound case. They don't incorporate families or individuals served in other capacities. And I do just want to note that while the majority of the families involved with wraparound had a primary language of Portuguese or Spanish, that this isn't necessarily indicative of higher levels of need in those populations, but the fact that there are more systemic barriers to access for those groups as compared to their English-speaking peers. I could certainly speak a lot more about that, but I also want to be mindful of time, so I'm going to move to the next slide. As I mentioned early on in the presentation, any student identified by the district as homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act is automatically referred to wraparound, and so we check in with these families periodically throughout the school year. And then in addition to, the kind of typical wraparound services that we provide to all families, we're able to offer families struggling with housing some additional supports through a Department of Education grant, which allows us to purchase additional items to support these families. So far we've been able to use the grant funds to purchase things like toiletries and essential hygiene items, clothing, diapers, Market Basket gift cards for our families to buy food, Lyft gift cards. We're finding that transportation is a huge need for a lot of our families, and especially for a family that's struggling, then that makes it harder to get to work, get to appointments, all of that. So the transportation support has been really helpful. And then we're also able to purchase individualized items that really make a huge difference for a family who's struggling. For example, I was able to purchase a stroller for a mom who lived nearby to the food pantry but hadn't been able to access it because she also had an infant, and so carrying the food and the infant back home was a challenge, and the stroller then made that possible. Or another example, we were able to purchase like dress pants and dress shoes for a high school student who had gotten a job but didn't have the work attire to be able to continue the job. So things that kind of may seem pretty small but are able to have a large impact for an individual or a family. And the grant provided the funding for last year as well as this current school year, so that's something we're able to continue to offer for students and families for this year. And then looking to the future, we started this new school year with 73 cases rolled over from last year, so families that are going to need some level of ongoing support heading into this year. And we have already received actually 47 new referrals this year. It's gone up since I sent this presentation the other week. And then we're each carrying a caseload right now of around 55 families. So, you know, based on these numbers and the things that we were able to accomplish last year, we're really seeing like the need is here for these services in our community. And we hope to be able to expand wraparound in the near future so that we can continue to provide the necessary supports for our families while also being able to continue to develop partnerships within the community and kind of be able to address needs as they arise. And Doug, if we can just go to the last one. Thank you. That's all I have. Does anyone have questions for us?
I'm just curious how you're finding the mental health services challenge. Is it getting better?
I don't know that it's getting better. I'm not sure it's getting worse. It's definitely a huge need, and we're definitely finding that like the agencies in the area that provide those services are understaffed or don't have staff that meet the language needs of our population. We are working closely with advocates, and they have some clinicians that come into the schools and provide counseling there, which is a solution for some families. And I'm in frequent contact with their director of intake. But yeah, unfortunately, the need is much greater than the capacity right now.
National crisis.
Yeah.
And that actually was my thought, was around the mental health, because I did see that you had mentioned depression in, you know, one of the slides as being something obviously from a mental standpoint, but I was curious about suicidal support and you know, gender equity kind of issues. Is that something that would kind of still fall within you all being a resource to try and connect people with you know, advocates or opportunities to try and help and support in those areas?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm trying to think of so in a case where a student might be suicidal, like obviously like there are other steps that would be taken as well. Right. And psychiatric emergency services is getting involved, but a lot of times those are situations where then the school adjustment counselor is looping us in as well and saying, hey, like we kind of had this acute crisis, but this family is going to need to be connected to kind of ongoing supports. And so that's definitely, those are situations where we definitely would be getting involved. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
When we were at the Masons, remember what I had mentioned to you? I think that would be good information for Kayla as well. I was talking to them about a resource in the community, which they'll pass along to you as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's great. Any other questions? Great presentation, thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
really, and so happy that we were able to start this, because I know how important it is, and your caseloads are creeping up. So hopefully they won't get too overwhelming, but please let us know if it does, so we can see if we can get you some more help if we need it.
Sounds good. Thank you all very much.
Thanks. Was that your whole report?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, just making sure. Now, Mr. Diaz.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Chair. This is tonight's update from Finance and Operations. Richer Elementary Statement of Interest. On September 1st, the district received a visit from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or MSBA, which conducted a senior study of the Richer Elementary Statement of Interest, which the district submitted to the MSBA in the spring of 2022. The senior study is step one for any SOI that is receiving consideration for funding by the MSBA. During the senior study, the MSBA evaluated the physical condition of the building, assessed capacity issues, design issues, any other site considerations, and evaluated our maintenance of the school. Next steps for the process is that the MSBA Board of Directors will evaluate the results of all the senior studies that were conducted. And in late November, early December, the MSBA Board of Directors will conduct a vote to see which of the SOIs will move into the next stage. If we receive a positive vote, we move into what they call a 270-day eligibility period. There is an induction date into this 270-day period that will start either on April or May 1st of 2023. If we move into that induction, during that 270 days, there are a number of preliminary requirements that we would be required to complete within, again, that time limit. I list all of them here. I'm not going to read them, but feel free to ask me questions on any of those. And again, if we're able to move into the next stage, and if we are successful in completing all of the necessary steps within that 270-day period, we would be eligible to move into the next step, which would be the feasibility study phase. So we've done this before. We did it well back then, so I'm hopeful that we can move into this stage and then complete the necessary steps. FY23 Yellow Bus Transportation Services. Of all of the operational systems under my office, transportation continues to be our largest challenge. Due to the impact by shortage of drivers, we are struggling almost daily, or actually we are struggling daily. Out of the 5 NRT contracts, NRT is our transportation services provider, out of the 5 contracts that they manage out of their Hudson hub, there are currently 12 routes without permanent drivers. 6 of those 12 routes are Marlborough routes. There are currently 7 drivers pursuing their CDL licenses, with 3 additional candidates in early stages of pre-employment screening status. The earliest a driver will come into play that will have eligibility to take the CDL test is currently mid-October. So we have a few weeks between now and the first relief. As you can see in the route matrix that I provided in my report, out of the 132 daily runs that we have in Marlborough, we're running roughly 95% of them on time by using cover drivers from other contracts to help us here in Marlborough. There are, however, 3 elementary routes that are leaving their schools about 30 minutes after the bell. We're trying to tighten that as much as possible, but a couple of those buses are leaving 30 minutes after the bell. And there are 3 secondary routes, 2 at the middle school, 1 at the high school, in which we cannot provide service right now, and the earliest available service is at 4 p.m. As additional drivers complete their training and obtain their CDL, we'll assign them to the most critical need at that time. Unfortunately, between now and the first available driver that passes a CDL, we are susceptible to daily callouts, which changes this matrix on a daily basis. We conduct triage with NRT twice daily, once early in the morning and then again in the afternoon, to make sure that we know where we have issues and that we can communicate those issues to the parents as soon as possible. Today, for example, we had one route over a cane that we had to contact families and say, we can't run this route until 8:55. So if you can drive, please do so. If you can't, we're going to come by, pick up your students, but unfortunately they're going to be late. And we're susceptible to that almost every day because of the driver shortage. I wish I had better news. Unfortunately, we don't. The pipeline of drivers coming in, while we see that they're there, they're not moving nearly fast enough through the pipeline to provide immediate relief. I do want to call out and express gratitude for the existing cohort of drivers, because their resiliency and flexibility allow us to get, like I said, 95% of our routes to school on time. And when there are call-outs, they're able to step in, change their lives around last minute, and help us out in conducting those runs, even if it's late. So I want to just call them out and appreciate their daily effort, which is enormous. I also want to call out Steve Phelan in the transportation office and Chrissy Creswell in the NRT hub, because those two people together work some magic with this matrix every single day to get these students here. So that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions you may have for me.
The setups that we have in the schools to house the kids while they're waiting for their bus to come is still working okay? You have the resources?
We have staffing available. We have snacks available. The principals know whatever resources they need to keep the kids entertained and comfortable during these times. It's available to them.
Okay, great.
How are we handling the attendance issues? And the only thing is, obviously, there's nothing that they can do if they're getting to school late. And I'm just curious because I know, there's the coding that needs to happen in the front of the school, and obviously then it has other impact, that rolls on through because we have to deliver that information to DESE later. And so I'm just curious as to how are we trying to stay ahead of it so we don't find ourselves having some form of an issue because, attendance isn't coming in correctly. I mean,
we're housed at Whitcomb, so sometimes I tell Mrs. House, the principal, that a bus is going to be late, and then a few minutes later I hear through the intercom them notifying the teachers that a bus is pulling up 10 minutes late and not to mark those students absent. We also want to recognize that some of these students rely on school breakfast, so we allow them some time as well to go to the cafeteria. The cafeteria remain open so that there's breakfast available for the students as well.
I guess that's where I think of the wraparound services, because you're going to have these students that are going to be coming in late, and a number of them, I'm sure, that makes them anxious. It's about how they're entering their day, they're scrambling, they're behind the 8 ball, as well as then the teachers, I'm sure, okay, so how do I keep the kids in the class moving, but also catching up the ones that are coming in? So I guess that's where, I don't know. It kind of goes without saying, but I'm saying it out loud. It's almost like we're going to have an asterisk around a number of these different situations so that when we look at some of the data down the road, we're remembering some of these things that are happening, because I think there's nothing you can do, and you guys are doing a yeoman's job. But it just seems like we've got to kind of keep it fresh in our mind, because it's additional pressure that we're putting on all of the staff to have to deal with it within the classroom space, even the students, because I'm sure it disrupts what's going on at times and how that's going to work. So I just, I don't know, I'm kind of saying it out loud because I think we all need to kind of keep it in the front of our minds. It's horrible about trying to figure out about how to get them into school, but then it's that transition of actually getting them into the school where they can actually learn, learn and be effective. So, sorry. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Acceptance of the September 13th minutes. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Public participation. Anyone from the public wishing to be heard? Seeing none, move on to action items. MHS staggered openings for 22-23. And I presume you are here with that news.
Yes, ma'am.
As you're walking to the front, I just wanted to comment, I'm sorry, I mentioned it before. All I was thinking the whole time is, I don't know what Mr. Riley and or you would have lost your mind if we didn't hire Steve Fallon. I mean, I can't even imagine you guys were handling all of that busing stuff yourself without like someone laser focused on it. There's no way it would happen.
I want to call out to Mr. Fletcher and I did it together for a little while after Mr. Riley, and we were very close colleagues.
Yeah.
With a strong bond back then.
I mean, thank you for that work, because I can't even imagine.
Can I go back, Michelle, to a comment that Catherine made, that I know like at the high school, going with the tardy rates, one of the changes we made this year is we used to have the students come to like the house offices for Steve and I. We put a digital pad down by the main office, so they come in, they put in their code, so instantaneously they're tardy at 8:04 rather than losing time going upstairs. And at 8 o'clock, we immediately shut off kind of sitting down for breakfast, and you have to get, fortunately without the COVID situation, we can take the bagel to go, sit down in the classroom, where before we had the issue with we couldn't eat in the classroom, but now we can take your bagel, your protein bar, get your juice, your banana, go up, sit in the classroom, and not lose learning time and actually eat in the classroom. So that's kind of saved us a little bit. At least I'm sure the middle school's doing what we're doing at the high school, is to get them into the classroom as quickly as we can and not lose transition time. And it's worked pretty efficiently so far for us.
Sorry, can I ask a question on that?
Of course.
The only thing that I guess was in my head is that sometimes when the bus is delayed, the kids are already out there, right? Even the high school kids, and they're not realizing that it's going to be that late. So by the time they figure out about how to get, a car ride from, Johnny or whatever, can you pick me up and get me over there, they may be showing up late. And that's going to be kind of different than rolling in on the bus late. And that's, I think, where we have to start, figuring that out, because it's hard. Some kids are going to then be late because they're just tardy, and some kids are just trying to figure out, problem solve, how to actually get to school. And I guess that's where I'm kind of challenging us, that we've got to figure out something to help with that situation, since we are in the situation that we can't provide the transportation because we just don't have the drivers. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's a little bit different. And I think that's where, I know before we've been very laser focused on the attendance, because we have to deliver those numbers. But our attendance situation is going to be a little different. And so we need to figure out how to, make sure we're addressing it in the right way, as opposed to a ding because the kid can't physically get to school or is 10 minutes late because they were trying to figure out, could the aunt who lives across town come over to pick them up to get them there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, all right, thanks.
Okay.
All right, so Dr. Riley submitted the memorandum on 9 September asking the permission to have staggered openings. So the first one coming up, of course, is October 12th, where we have 144 students taking the PSAT exams. We also have 104 students taking the SAT exams. The advantage, I don't know if you know, but the advantage to having the SATs during a school day, not a Saturday, is we actually have 15 of our English language learner students taking the SAT. Wow. And if it's a Saturday, you don't get the dictionary, you don't get the directions in your native language. By having it on a Wednesday, you get those accommodations, which can be very beneficial for their scores. So it's a huge advantage to have it on a school day. We also have 8 students with either an IEP or a 504 that will have additional time as their accommodations given, which both for the EL numbers and the students with an IEP or 504 is an increase from last year's SAT. So that's a great thing to see at the high school level, that more students are taking advantage of the SAT during the work week on a Wednesday. The March dates, March 28th, 29th, and then the May 16th and 17th are the traditional 10th grade MCAS exam, the March date being English, the May being math. We have a very large sophomore class with 287 students taking that test. Of course, doing well in that test is the benefit is the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. And if you don't get that scholarship, you could also earn the Koplik Scholarship. So having a very quiet high school is certainly a benefit for those students who do. And we have more and more students, I would say, going to the state schools because they're fiscally very responsible. We have about 13 students, I think, last year who went to Bridgewater State, taking those John and Abigail Adams scholarships with them and saving their parents $1,700 and $1,900. So it is a great benefit. The June dates, right after graduation, June 6th and 7th. There's only 236 freshmen. However, last year was a very unusual year, as you well know. We tested 500 9th and 10th grade students in biology and physics, because the year before we had made the decision not to test the 9th grade in physics with the week on, week off with remote learning. So we tested 2 grades, and the initial data from the state, which is still raw data, is almost 1/3 of those students may need to retest. So 236 could be almost 400 students retesting in June. But of course, when we say that, a lot of those students were new to the country, newly arrived. Last year, for example, out of our junior class, we received 50 new juniors. When Mary was talking before about our transitional population, 50 new juniors, and I've been doing the MCAS for 5 years now. That was a huge addition to a junior class, is to get 1/5 of your class arriving your junior year. So it's not surprising that, you know, that number will go up as the year goes on, as we will continue to get 10th graders and 11th graders arriving that need the MCAS to graduate. So the advantages of having a quiet high school, testing from 8 o'clock till 11, bringing the rest of the students to arrive at 11 o'clock, having 3 hours of just quiet testing conditions. If you support it as you have the last few years, it's a great benefit for our students academically and their ability to perform and exceed on those standardized tests, which, again, at the high school level is different because it's a graduation requirement at the high school level, so it's a pretty higher stake than, unfortunately, at the elementary or the middle school level.
Entertain a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for coming. Okay, now we have the 3 collective bargaining agreements with 3 of our unions. We'll take them one at a time. We did review and vote on them earlier this evening in executive session, but we'll vote on them again here in open session. And these are agreements that we have already come to, which are then combined into the existing long-term contracts to form the collective bargaining agreements. So the first one is the collective bargaining agreement between Marlborough School Committee and the Marlborough cafeteria workers, SEIU Local 888. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Second one is the collective bargaining agreement between the Marlborough School Committee and the Marlborough Behavior Technicians, SEIU Local 888.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That carries. And lastly, we have the collective bargaining agreement between the Marlborough School Committee and the custodian houseworkers, AFL-CIU, State Council 93, Local 1709.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you, and thank you to all of the unions for our continued collaborative work together. Acceptance of donations and gifts. We have from Staples, Marlborough Public Schools, Summer Program, and the Richer Elementary School, $5,140.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. FY23 FC 240 IDEA Federal Special Ed Entitlement Grant, $1,505,994.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. FY23 FC 262 Early Childhood Federal Entitlement Grant, $69,706.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. And lastly, we have school committee remote meeting options. So this is a follow-up to a request made a while back from Mrs. Matthews regarding utilizing the expansion of the remote option for municipal boards to use under the ruling of the Attorney General. In doing her due diligence, Mrs. Matthews learned that last year, Mr. Bergeron had gotten a legal opinion from our school attorney and her colleagues as to whether or not we as a school committee could I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to the page. So in order, my computer's doing weird things tonight. In order to it's not working. Basically, the attorney had ruled that we as a body could, in fact, vote ourselves to allow members to utilize the remote option during meetings. One of the big questions was whether or not we could do it, whether if we did committee members being remote, did we have to open that remote option up to the public? And the ruling found that as long as the public is still able to come here to the meeting, that we did not have to open it up to a remote option for the public. So for all intents and purposes, the request had been, could Mrs. Matthews, while she's not able to physically be present in this room, still participate in the meetings with everyone else being here and the public welcome to join us as well. So the ruling has been that, yes, that can happen, and that we should take a vote amongst ourselves to determine whether we want to do that here. Mrs. Hennessy.
So I'd like to make a motion that we move forward on allowing for the remote option to be available to Mrs. Matthews so she may fully participate, as opposed to feeling that she needs to be here in person currently. And it would certainly align with the allowance not only by our attorneys but also by the extension that the governor had made relative to remote access. So I'd like to move forward with that. Excuse me?
The extension was by the Attorney General. It's the Attorney General that oversees that, not the governor. Just clarifying.
So
I will second that. Any conversation, any discussion, questions? No?
Well, I just have to commend Mrs. Matthews for wanting to still do this, considering that it would be very easy for her to just, take it easy and do what she has to do for herself. And I commend her, and I'm glad we found, well, that's the tenaciousness of Mrs. Matthews. She found the way to do this, and I just wanted to thank her for doing that, and I look forward to having her face on that screen next time we meet.
I definitely support this option for Mrs. Matthews, considering she can't be here due to a medical condition. But I would hope that other members don't take this as, due to scheduling conflicts or other personal matters, to take this as a, I don't think it should be like a one-off kind of thing, unless it was something that they really need to be part of. Because I think we all understand that things happen in our lives, and sometimes we may miss a meeting for whatever reason. I just don't want us to rely on this as an option, that I think we should all do our best to be here in person. But in this circumstance, I think that this is the right solution for Mrs. Matthews.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Reports of school committee subcommittees. Mrs. Hennessy.
Thank you very much. So as the chair of the policy subcommittee, I actually just wanted to, I guess, make a little bit of a statement. We've had a number of parents, community members reach out not only to myself but to some of the building administrators as well as the superintendent relative to questions around the homework policy. And with that, I guess I just wanted to say, we have a homework policy. We've had a homework policy within district, I'm going to say early 90s at least, probably prior to that. Homework or extensions of classwork has been something that's been happened when I was little. It's continuing to happen. There's not any opportunity that we have presented or any of the administrators or the staff have presented saying no homework. Homework is allowed. Homework may be necessary. It may be called extensions of classwork. It could be something that you've been working on during the day. You may need more time. That may mean that you may need to do some reading at home, but also it may be that your child may not have some homework for a day, a couple days, maybe a week. I guess I'm saying this out loud because I would say that we all need to respect that Sometimes education has changed, and sometimes it's evolved in different ways. And what I may have experienced in my lifetime, as far as when I was a student in school, I may have had 3 hours of homework one night and may have had none the next night, and you may have had something completely different. So homework is allowed. Homework may happen. Homework also might not happen. And I think that that would be my suggestion as parents and community members. If you have concerns around the level of homework or the expectations, please obviously have a discussion with your child, with their teacher, with the building administrator. You can certainly reach out to us, but there is not anything across the district that any of us are promoting to not have homework. We're just also saying that allow that there may be, different levels of classwork needed depending upon whatever the curriculum may be at that point in time, maybe towards assessments that are happening, may not. And I'm saying that only because I think that there has been some concerns from some community members that there's a policy out there saying no homework. And I'm here to say that's not the case. May there be some misunderstanding or miscommunication at some point? I would say could be, because we all at times have different perspectives of things. So I'm trying to clear that up. I think we all need to do our best in communicating with each other really effectively, and best way of doing that is from a direct communication. So please have direct communications. If you feel that you as a parent would like for your child to have some additional work, I know that I as a parent approached some of my teachers at different points in times over the years where I may have needed or felt that my child needed some more time on flashcards or certain phonetics, something like different things that were going on. Please feel free, have that conversation with your teacher for your student. That's the best way of really understanding what's going on with your child and how you can help them and partner with the staff to do things on behalf of your child. And that's what we're all here for. I have never had any teachers that I personally have had with any of my students that have never been receptive. They've always been receptive and wanted to work with me on what was going to be best for my student. And I would hope that that would be the case for any and all community members, and I believe that that's what our staff is here to do. So I just encourage any parents, if you have concerns, please have that conversation with not only your own student, but with your teachers. And we're all here to work together. And whether there's homework or not, I'm sure it will all work together. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other committees? No. Mrs. Matthews did review the warrant, and someone, Mrs. Hennessy, were you signing? Oh. We're at members forum. I just didn't say it out loud. There weren't any other subcommittees. Did you want to add something in the subcommittee? Mrs. Hennessy cannot sign the warrant. Right, so anybody else can, so. We will sign the warrant. Members forum. I would like to mention that I had the opportunity to join the leadership team at the Teacher of the Year award ceremony at Masonic Hall, which was lovely, as it always is, and congratulations to Mr. Verdone, who was chosen Teacher of the Year, and a special shout out and thanks to the Masons for continuing to do this ceremony. It's nice. Anybody else? Any other members? Would our union or student reps like to add anything to the meeting this evening? Okay, great. entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. We are adjourned at 8:45.